Hello.
Yes, we are.
I think we're on. We are.
Oh, okay, we're on. Thank you. And thank you, FA, for joining us as well for this great discussion that we're going to have about a class action lawsuit filed by a group of female police officers from the Metropolitan Police Department in Washington, D.C. Actually, the 10 ladies involved in the lawsuit. We have, I think we have 3 or 4 of them here with their attorney. We also, I must mention that we did ask the Metropolitan Police Department to offer a statement or a response, and so far we haven't heard from them. Having said that, though, let's bring in attorney Pam Keith. Pam, welcome, and can you introduce the ladies that were with us tonight?
Thank you so much for having us, Carl. My name is attorney Pam Keith. I am a labor and employment attorney practicing here in Washington, D.C. And about a year ago, maybe a little bit more, I got introduced to Zenobia Brinkley and Tabitha Knight. They were police officers who were with the Metropolitan Police Department looking for an attorney. And they came to Temple Law offices and myself and my partner, Donald Temple. And they had tried a few other attorneys, and they were looking to get representation to deal with race discrimination, gender discrimination, and systematic retaliation. And when they began, it was just 2, but after a little bit of legwork, we found out so many other people were affected by this. And you were meeting some of them tonight. One of them is Lieutenant LaShawn Lockerman, who has been with MPD for many years. She is a person who is in the management chain and yet still is experiencing race discrimination, gender discrimination, unfair treatment, and retaliation. Tamika Hampton is a sergeant in the MPD and has been with the police department, I think 18 years, but she can tell you herself. A lot of time on the job, and also suffering from discrimination, just being devalued, ignored, shunned, and picked on and retaliated, bullied, and harassed. And then we have Karen Carr. Karen's been with the MPD, I think, Karen, you said more than 20 years. And Karen is an officer and works on the streets, keeping us safe all the time, and still has to suffer from discrimination and retaliation in the workplace. So those are the 3 that are on. And unfortunately, Zenobia wanted to join us, but she is having Wi-Fi problems, technical problems. And if anybody's ever been on a Zoom, they understand how that can happen.
Yeah.
So she was on briefly, but the Wi-Fi kept cutting in and out. So sadly, she can't join us tonight. Maybe that changes, but that's.
And there's a total of 10 women, correct?
I'm sorry, there are 10 plaintiffs that they range in different experiences. One of our plaintiffs was a relatively young officer. Her name was Tiara Brown. She was the first ever African-American woman officer of the year for the entire MPD, and she's also a Golden Gloves boxer. And one of our plaintiffs was Assistant Chief of Police, Chanel Dickerson, who has been on the job for more than 32 years. And so it runs the gamut. It's not one kind of officer, one department, or one division. It really runs the table of all of MPD.
All right, let me start with Sergeant Lockerman. You're a ranking officer. Why and how could somebody disrespect you? Tell us your story.
Lieutenant Lockerman.
Lieutenant.
Well, I was assigned to a district where ultimately I didn't know when I went there, but I was not wanted in that position. I wasn't wanted. My position was belittled, and they started harassing me by taking any little frivolous thing that they could do to write me up. It even got to the point that at one point, I explained to an officer when we were in the midst of the COVID outbreak at the very beginning, and we had several people out with COVID. Our manpower was suffering a great deal because of that. I told a male officer that he needed to wear his mask if he was going to be in close contact, speaking with someone else, because he was not wearing the mask. Um, I went home after that. He complained to the commander, and they opened an investigation on me. And I
On
was well
you.
within my. I mean, I was within the rules. It was an executive order per the chief of police. I'm a manager on the police department, and that's my job to enforce the rules and regulations of the Metropolitan Police Department.
So
I
what
mean,
was your response when they opened this investigation on you?
I was shocked. I couldn't believe it. I was like, what? And when they asked me, it's customary whenever they open an investigation, they asked me to write a statement. And I did. I mean, as I was ordered to do so. And ultimately, when it went to the assistant chief's office, everybody was pretty flabbergasted by that because I hadn't done anything wrong, and it was ultimately unfounded. And but the fact was, the stress that you go under when you're put under investigation for something that I didn't do anything wrong.
Before I go any further, let me ask Attorney Pam
Hmm?
Keefe this. Counselor, were all these allegations made by white officers, or were they made by, or black officers were involved as well?
It runs the table. It kind of depends on the issue and the situation. As Black women, you kind of get it both ways. On the one hand, you get it on your race and from white men, white women, and people of other races who feel disquieted by having Black women in the workplace. And you also get it from Black men sometimes.
Wow.
And a lot of times it's on the gender front, right? Especially in circumstances of sexual harassment where they feel this kind of familiarity in the workplace with a Black woman, that they can be themselves, or they can be cool, they can be familiar, and then when you rebuff them, they get really angry and really retaliatory. And the theory is that you're supposed to keep your mouth shut about that because that's the loyalty amongst Black people in an integrated workplace, that we're supposed to look out for each other and be down for each other. And so that translates into the woman needs to be silent about being sexually harassed.
Yeah, and Sergeant Hampton, did any of the black officers come and say, put it to the side and say, "Hey, I'm with you. I support you. I understand what you're doing. I'll help you. Whatever you want to do, just let me know." Did you get that kind of feedback from the black officers at MPD?
You got to unmute.
You're muted.
I did. I got a lot of feedback. I also had feedback from some officers who wanted to let me know that they silently support me because of the retaliatory culture on MPD.
Oh, okay. Officer Carr, what did you experience?
Good evening. Thank you for having me. Well, I filed an EEO complaint in 2019 for discrimination, harassment, retaliatory practices, unfair labor practice, diminished scores on my performance evaluation. This year is my 25th year of service, and I've never received a 2 or a 3 on any performance evaluation in almost 25 years. But I noticed once I filed my first EEO complaint in 2019, the harassment became progressively worse. It just seems like every time I sat down and spoke with the EEO director, everything that I told him somehow made it back to the command staff. And so now the people that I, filed the complaints against were retaliating against me. They were pulling IS numbers against me, making up things to investigate me for. They're trying to get me for little small infractions on the job. And these are some of the things that other officers, have done in the past, but they came after me like full force. I can't just give you one example. I just have so many different examples to give you. I've been discriminated against by um, uh, lieutenants, captains, commanders, sergeants, white officers, black officers.
Hmm.
A black male sergeant that's assigned to the emergency response team, for example, filed an EEO complaint against me. He said that the complaint was for sexual harassment, racial and gender discrimination. I created a hostile working environment for him. And he also tried to cite that I hurt his feelings and I embarrassed him. And none of those are protected under the EEO class whatsoever. But he filed that complaint. And because of that complaint, they tried to suspend me for 30 days. And I had to fight, for my, for my suspension days because I didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
And when I reported his misconduct and when I reported the way he treated me, no one cared because I'm reporting his conduct to men. And
Right.
so if I'm reporting this to the men that I've already complained on prior to this EEO complaint, where's it going to go?
Right.
Who's going to listen to, me, and who's going to actually take my side and say, you know what, she's right. We need to listen to her and find out what's really going on and try to, offer her help or assistance. But it's never that way. If you go to EEO and you tell the director of the EEO what you experienced on the job, he's going to immediately go back and tell those same people that you're complaining about. So they already know what you're talking about before you can even shut the door of the office and get in your car and leave. They already know everything that you've talked about. The EEO director ordered his investigators to record each and every one of our conversations. It's supposed to be confidential. There's no confidentiality if he's recording your information and he's sharing that information with people that are affiliated with IAD, which is an internal affairs division. So we have no one to protect us. We have no safe haven. We have nowhere to go. We have no one to turn to. And when you try to, go to work every day, put a smile on, protect the citizens, do your job, it's extremely difficult. This is extremely difficult.
And Officer Carr, let me ask you this then, because how did it all start though? Was he trying to make a pass at you? Was he trying to hit on you? And you sort of rebuffed him? How? Because it just doesn't seem like it came out of the blue. So how did it start?
So this particular sergeant that's assigned to the emergency response team was actually the supervisor of Officer Zenobia Brinkley. I'm sorry, SPO Zenobia Brinkley. And she had already filed numerous complaints against that sergeant, including another sergeant, a lieutenant, and a couple of other of the male officers in the unit. So this sergeant he tried to use his authority and his power over me to give me an order to leave the room when I had already had an order from my direct supervisor to stay put and take care of some training. Long story short, he tried to put me out of a room that I was already told to stay in and do not leave until my training's done. He's loud, he's boisterous, he's unprofessional, he's yelling at me, he's raising his voice at me, he's making threats to write me up. So I go tell the original supervisor, I said, hey, you told me to stay here and do my work. Now he's telling me to get out. What do you want me to do? And he's in there raising his voice and yelling and screaming. And I'm looking at my sergeant like, are you going to help me? Or are you going to do anything about it? But the problem with that was that particular male sergeant was part of my original EEO complaint. So now he's taken that opportunity to get back at me by not assisting me as my first line supervisor to fight against someone that's conducted a personal attack against me. My sergeant's only recourse was, Cameron, you know how he is, don't add any fuel to the fire. That's inappropriate.
Right. So what's important about some of these stories, Carl, is that EEO at this police department gets weaponized. It gets weaponized against women who have legitimate complaints. So the sergeant that filed a sexual harassment claim against Karen Carr and so forth, that was just if you can file a claim, I can file a claim too, kind of thing, right? That sergeant was her superior, right? He had the power in that dynamic. He had the ability to make her life a misery, right? They had nothing but conflict. What does he mean, sexual harassment? She wasn't trying to hit on him. That nobody even could make a straight face argument. And in the end, it was not, she gets disciplined, right? She had a claim against him, she's ignored. He files a claim against her, he gets disciplined. That's the double standard. That's the total illogicness of it. It's the retaliation of it. And it's meant to terrorize and terrify people into silence. That is what it was meant to do. It's not meant just to punish Karen. It was meant to send a message to everyone else. And that message is you go to EEO, everybody's going to know your business. The minute you do, you're going to be made to be a pariah in the department. They're going to start investigating you and putting claims against you that are completely out the blue and out of the air, and there's nothing you can do about it. And the people who are supposed to stand for you and protect you are going to be part of the system that harms you. So
Okay,
you
and folks, if you have any questions for our panel, just comment on Facebook or YouTube, and we'll get those questions to them. But I got a question for you, though, Counselor EEO. Uh, is it made up of women, so African American women, or is it just all white males? Well, what's the makeup there? Because I think if it was some women, that sympathize with some of the women that are on the panel tonight.
No.
I'm glad you asked the question, Carl, because in NPD's EEO has a very unique situation, right? There's one guy that's the head of the EEO department. He had, over the course of 4 years, he's had 6 people work for him. One of them, he's had work for him only since December of last year, and she's already quit. The other 5, one white male, one black male, one Latina female, and 2 black women, the other 5 are suing him because he bullied them into disclaiming legitimate claims of discrimination. He forced them to change their investigations. He purposefully informed witnesses and the people that you complained against of what you said in your statements. So he was violating confidentiality. When all 5 people who have worked for you for more than 4 months are suing you, there is definitely something wrong with you, right? So this gentleman has been instrumental and a core component of perpetuating discrimination and protecting those who discriminate. In 4 years, in a department with thousands of employees, right? 4 years, he has not allowed a single claim of race or gender discrimination to be validated in 4 years.
Exactly.
Let me go to Lieutenant Lockman. You're a ranking officer. Were you ever subject to any abuse from anyone that's beneath you in rank, or somebody equal or above you in rank?
Not beneath me in rank, but I was definitely subject to abuse to my previous commander that I worked for. And actually, I sat in his office in a meeting, and he looked at me and he told me that people that have sat in that same chair that I was sitting in, he made them cry. And he said it as if he was proud of it, and he expected me to cry. And my position is that, I earned my job, I earned my rank. I was not hired by him. I went through the police academy like everyone else. I met all of the standards that I was supposed to meet. I graduated from the academy. I made sergeant. I made lieutenant. And in fact, I was number 2 out of out of I don't know how many people it was, but it was an extremely large list. But I was number 2 overall on the lieutenant's list. And from the moment that I got promoted, when I went to my initial assignment, they treated me like I got no support whatsoever, none whatsoever. And you're going from one rank to the next. It's actually a completely different job. Like I know how to be a sergeant because I was just a sergeant, but you need support, you need some coaching, and you need a little assistance just to figure it out and find your way. You also go from one district to another district, so you're completely new. I got absolutely no support whatsoever. I asked for a transfer just because I wanted to see things from a different lens, from a different side of the city as a manager. And so I was granted the transfer. And from the moment that I got there, he just let it be known that he did not want me there. But of course, because he doesn't have control over that, the chiefs have control over that. He had no control, and he made life, I mean, for lack of a better word, he made life hell for me until I finally, I'd had enough. And I tried to be so strong, as strong as I possibly could. And when I was getting close to having enough, I started seeking attorneys. And I ran into Pam and had no idea that so many other women were going through the same thing that I was going through, because people just suffer in silence. And once I joined with Pam and joined the lawsuit, oh, he didn't stop. At this point, he started making up stuff. This is what he would do. He sent an email to me. I was due to work at 8 o'clock. The email came in at 7:30, 7:35, in which at that time I'm going to be traveling to work. I'm not actually at work. en route to work. And when I would go to work, I would go straight to roll call. If I was the watch commander that night, I was the watch commander on a Saturday night. So I arrived at work. I did my job like I was supposed to do. I was informed by the watch commander that I was relieving, that it had the evening shift, of a crime that had occurred. And he told me that it was in my sector. And I said, okay, let me sit down right now before I even get started in my day and let my constituents know, which is what I did. He said that he had posted it on social media, so that part was taken care of, and he had taken care of the other notifications that we have to do because it happened early in his shift. Um, my commander at the time sent me a message. There was something that he wanted me to do, but he sent it at 7:30. He sent it to me. He sent it to the person who was actually the watch commander and on duty at that time. And although I got to work at 8 o'clock, I didn't officially assume the watch until 9 o'clock. So he still had the watch commander phone, and he sent it to a couple of other people a couple of other people weren't at work, and a couple of other people were. But the most important thing was that he sent it to the on duty watch commander at the time, so that he could take care of what the commander wanted taken care of at 8 o'clock, because you're sending it at 7:30. I'm not even on duty when you're sending it. He didn't hold him responsible for it at all. He held me responsible for it, who wasn't even at work at the time, and wrote me up for it.
But
Right.
did he ever come
The,
out and tell you, direct, I don't want you here? Did he tell, or was he just like death by a thousand
basically,
slices?
and he's allowed to run this. The police department is this is a public service. This is not a for-profit business. We provide a service to the community that we all pay taxes for. The District of Columbia is a federal city. So
Right.
even when we pay our federal taxes, whether you live inside the city or not, we all pay taxes for the services that we provide at the Metropolitan Police Department. There is no one person nobody owns that business. It is not a privately owned business. Nobody can decide who he believes should be there and who should not be there, who should have rank and who should not have rank. And he has taken it upon himself that he's going to make life miserable for you if he feels like you're not worthy of a job that he didn't give you in the first place.
Right. I think to summarize what LaShawn is saying so eloquently is that it's about favoritism, factionalism, and abuse of power, right? There is a culture at MPD where if you get assigned to a department and your boss doesn't like you, they don't have to man up and just deal with you and treat you fairly. They get to make you miserable and hound you and harass you and haze you until you quit or you ask for a transfer or you get fired, right? They feel, as a mental, psychological, emotional worldview, that that's a morally sound thing to do.
Yeah.
Right? Because they feel like, well, since it's my department, right? Since these are my people, I get to decide who's going to be here, who's not. And there's no check on that instinct, right? When somebody rides herd on someone, like Karen, somebody who makes them absolutely miserable day in and day out, like LaShawn, nobody says that's wrong. Nobody calls that wrong. Everybody just shrugs and looks the other way because if you complain, you become the problem. The person who's doing this isn't the problem. The person who complains about this is the problem. And that's why we had to sue, right? Because you can't reason with that mindset.
Right.
You
I got
just
a bunch of questions for you from the audience who's watching us tonight. Natalie wants to know, I guess it's for you, Counselor, can you file an EEO complaint outside of the MPD?
Absolutely, but only after you go through the EEO process, right? So you have to file internal, then you get to file an EEOC claim, which is the EEOC is a federal administration, right? The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission is a federal administration. Or in DC, you can file in the Office of Human Rights. But here's the thing. Both of those institutions have years-long backlogs. So you file your EEOC claim or you file your Office of Human Rights claim, and it might be a year before you even get a phone call for an interview, right? They have a 2-year backlog of investigation. So while your life is being made miserable, while you go home every night so stressed out you can't sleep, while you're losing your hair, your blood pressure's going up. You can't even talk to your friends and neighbors about what's going on with you because they really just aren't going to understand. But while all of that is happening, you get to wait 2 years before any one of these institutions even has the bandwidth to take up your issue, right? And so by then, you've either departed the department, you've been fired, you've been demoted, or you've quit to save your own mental health, right? So the system that is actually supposedly there to protect the civil rights of individuals is not doing that. It's gatekeeping. It's keeping people from being able to go to court in a timely fashion. It's forcing them to wait months and months and months before they can even get anywhere, right? And because their abusers know that it's going to take a year or two before anybody even looks at their claim, what's the incentive to stop abusing?
All right, let me ask you this, because I know you're asking for monetary damages as well, but are you asking for changes? Because you just gave out a list of inappropriate behavior by some of the officers, and the system seems rigged against the ladies. So are you asking for changes in the system?
Absolutely. But let me make clear, there are a lot of entities out there that want to change policing by creating more body worn cameras or more active bystander training or reporting requirements to, or an equity officer like the MPD wants to hire more senior staff to tell people what to do. That's not the issue, and that's not how you're going to solve the problem. The problem is a mindset issue. The problem is a culture issue because there's a mindset that's taught at the very beginning of the academy that what happens in the department stays in the department. That if you are a snitch, you are going to get retaliated against.
Wow.
And the senior leadership is going to protect those who are retaliating, isolating, shunning, bullying, and harassing you because they're going to think that that's a valid way of punishing you for reporting misconduct, discrimination, harassment, or whatever. So if you want to change policing behavior, Carl, you start to encumber the thing that police officers care most about. What they care most about is their pensions, because police are one of the few people who have defined benefit pension plans that basically pension until you're dead, right? You encumber their promotability to make rank, and you encumber their job security. And the way you do that is that you create a system that punishes officers and holds them accountable for shunning and rudeness and bullying and harassment and intimidation. And if you don't have a system that holds them accountable for that, then you're never going to change policing on the inside. And if you never change policing on the inside, you will never change policing on the outside. Do not get it twisted, Carl. Derek Chauvin started as a bully in his shop. The guy who killed Michael Brown was a bully in his shop. The guy who shot Laquan McDonald was a bully in his shop. How do you know that? Because all the officers standing around didn't shoot. Only one did. And I bet you that person was a problem child from day one. But that person was protected by a system that says, oh, we don't report that guy. Right. So that is why it's so important that you have a system that is completely anonymous, completely randomized, year-round analysis of their treatment of others, treatment of their fellow officers, treatment of the janitorial staff, treatment of the civilians, how they treat people. And if they get consistently low scores on how they treat people, they cannot be promoted to management. That is how you change behavior.
Gotcha. All right, we got a bunch of questions coming in, so I'm going to put it to the ladies, counselor, if you don't mind. I'll start with Officer Carr. Teresa says, give an example of how he made your life hell. How was your life made hell? Teresa.
Well, it depends. Most mornings I would drive into work. Once I get there, I sit in the parking lot, have an anxiety attack, basically a meltdown, cry, try to get my nerves back together, put my game face on, and go into work. Some days I would get an assignment and roll call at 5:30, and an hour or two later, the assignment has changed. My particular supervisor would give the assignment to the other people in my squad. He will neglect to give the information to me. So I'm not there, obviously, and the other officers are there. So now he's looking for me and he wants to know why I didn't respond to the next location. And I'm like, well, you only gave me one assignment. And like, it's like, how am I supposed to know what you want me to do if you're not telling me where you need me to be? And I'm prior military. I spent 7 years in the military. I know how to follow an order. I know how to follow instructions. The position that I was in SOD, which is the Special Operations Division, it says that you have to be able to work with little to no supervision. So with that being said, if you need me to go and do something and you're my supervisor, you should supervise me fairly, and you should supervise me without bias, and you should also supervise me the same way that you're supervising everyone else. I mean, it's plenty of days where I've just driven the scout car down a road somewhere and parked and just cried because I just couldn't take the psychological abuse. You know, I go home at night, can't sleep, can't eat, my hair's falling out, I'm stressed out. You know, it's to the point where you go to work, you never know what you're going to do. You're walking on eggshells. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. If you say something wrong, it's not the right thing. If you say something right, it's the wrong thing. And that's just how I was from 2019 up until I left the Special Operations Division. It was like they came to work to purposely find some type of reason to just poke at me for no reason. And like I said, I have 25 years on this month. I will have approximately 25 years on the police department. I've never been in trouble. I've never had any issues. I have zero citizens complaints. I've done nothing wrong. But because I spoke out and spoke up for myself, I've been labeled. I'm an angry Black woman. I'm a
Wow.
problematic officer. I need to be
Mm.
supervised. And, you know, I'm making something out of nothing. No, being discriminated against is something. Me coming to work every day crying because I have no one to help me or to protect me, that is something. Going home and being a single parent and having no significant other to go to talk to help me. So I had to go to therapy. I had to go see a therapist to try to figure out, is it me? Like, is it me, Karen Carr? Am I messed up? Am
Mm.
I a bad individual? Am I a bad person? Or am I working around inappropriate supervisors? Am I working around people that are immature? Am I working around people that are racist, sexist, misogynistic, biased?
Yeah.
And I would say yes to all of that. So how do you deal with that? I'm supposed to be there to protect the public and serve them, but there's no one protecting me.
Right.
No one.
Well,
So,
and except me.
well, except
Yeah.
Pam. Except Pam,
Did
you
that
know.
affect your performance though?
Yeah,
On the
absolutely.
job?
Because several times I've had to go to the performance evaluation appeal board to fight for um, my score. They were giving me twos and threes. I'm not a 2 and 3 officer. I'm assigned to the Special Operations Division. I escort the President of the United States, the Vice President of the United States, the First Lady of the United States. So if I'm a problematic officer and I'm a 2, how on God's green earth could I be in that unit? How could I have been in Special Operations Division since 2003? From 2003 until 2021, I was in the Special Operations Division. If I'm that messed up, why am I still there?
Right.
How can you justify keeping an officer there that has bad performance and low standards? It's just it's unheard of.
Right. So, Tamika, I want to give you an opportunity to talk about retaliation, what it looks like. What does the blue coat of silence looks like? If you cross that line, what do they do to you? Because I think a lot of people out there may not understand.
Thank you. So, with retaliation, if they feel like you are a snitch or you're educating the community, I was on a scene as a sergeant. I was newly promoted in May. This scene happened in the month of September of just last year, 2021. I was I rode on the scene with a partner, white male sergeant. We get there and it's 30 something shell casings on the ground. It's a bullet hole in a window of an apartment building. It is a car that is crashed into another car with no one there. So it's a pretty big scene just to give you a picture of it. While being there on the scene, as I'm trying to collect information to see what my next move would be as an official, I was ignored. There were other sergeants there who was just ignoring me and whispering amongst each other. And that was a way to show the other officers that was there that they didn't have to respect me either. Well, apparently they end up walking toward a group of black males because they had a suspect in that group from a video camera that they saw, from a surveillance camera that they saw. While arresting one of the young men in the group started getting a little rowdy and upset, and they were yelling and fussing. Well, one of the sergeants decided to get in front of that group and myself because I was within the group while the officers were arresting one of the men. And there was a couple of other sergeants in the group as well, just to make sure that nothing would happen. Well, one of the sergeants got in front of all of us, pulled his service weapon out, pointed it to the ground. When he did that, the crowd really became irate. So as I'm trying to tell the crowd to just calm down and, stay where they are, don't go toward him, the crowd showed me their disdain verbally. So I told them, well, you can always put in a complaint. And because I said that, I instantly turned into the enemy. My partner, who I rode on the scene with, left me there. After the arrest was effected, my partner got in the car that we rode to that scene in together, and he left me there.
Wow.
And that was a straight point. And it was just to let them know, listen, this is how snitches get treated. Since you want to tell them to put in a complaint, we're going to show everyone what happens when you do that. And that's what happened. I was left on the scene. One of the officers realized what happened. Actually, all of them realized, but one of them approached me quietly and asked me, was I okay? And told me that she would take me back to the station. I raised that particular sergeant on the air by his call sign and by his name 3 times and was ignored. That's a big thing because we have to monitor the radio. So he purposely ignored me. And that was a way to let me know this is what happened when you snitch. This is what happened when you educate the community.
Right.
When we're doing something that we shouldn't be doing.
Right.
Well, let me ask you this now. Are you concerned about your safety tonight? Because, they're actually hearing, they're watching, they're seeing you. They see your face, they know you, and they're, getting in detail. And this is for all the ladies, including the attorney, Keith. Are you concerned about your current safety? You're talking about police officers. We know the culture of the police department. And
absolutely.
So
absolutely, yes. We all are concerned about our safety. However, I feel that thanks to the rest of the courageous women and our courageous man and our attorney, our fearless attorney, I feel like we're all standing together, even though we're not around each other in the same environment at work all the time. This is something that we have to do, because if we don't, it will continue. It will grow. It will get worse. We cannot concede to the corruption. We cannot stand here and allow the department to just corrode with us in it.
Right.
Right.
And I just want to point out a couple of things, Carl, about what Tamika shared with the audience. First of all, it is unheard of to leave an officer on the scene, especially one as volatile as that one, right? Because that's just put her life in danger. Second of all, Tamika was saying to the crowd, you can complain, as opposed to bum rushing this officer and getting somebody killed, including yourself or me, right? Because that's what you're supposed to do on the scene. You're supposed to say what it takes to calm down the crowd, as opposed to saying or doing things to agitate the crowd. Pulling out the service weapon was something to agitate the crowd, right? If Tamika had not been there, if she had not had a heart for the community, right? If she did not know what young Black men in a circumstance like that are thinking and how they're feeling and how they're moving, if she wasn't credible with that community, that situation could have been so much worse. And that is exactly why MPD had a cadet program, why it hired Black people who live in the community to be officers, so that they can use that street knowledge and experience and that that credibility with people to to diffuse situations like that. Tamika should have gotten an award for being able to diffuse a situation like that with just a few sentences, rather than having a whole bunch of people get arrested for, attacking an officer, or worse, somebody getting killed.
Right. I just
Right.
want to say this.
And
I got
and
a
I
lot of people sending us tweets. They're all in support of you ladies. They got your back. They just want you to know. 'Cause I know I'm not going to get a chance to get all the questions, but they just want to know they appreciate what you ladies are doing, especially on the job and the fight that you're involved. That's just I'll read one. It says, I'm incredibly proud of these strong heroes who are speaking on it today. That's just one person. But I'm getting a lot of that. But I got a question, and this is for the attorney. The question the person says is always first class media. How often are workplace violence claims made by police officers? Is this often what we hear this or not?
It's a lot less frequent from police officers, because they're trained to kind of suck it up and deal, right? Their workplace is a much more sort of rough and tumble kind of workplace than the average workplace out there. And not only that, but there's such a culture of fear. There's such a culture of fear amongst police officers to not rat out their fellow police officers. They fear retaliation, isolation, and all of that. There's nothing good that comes from you if you complain, so they don't. But the problem with that is that officers are not just regular employees out there. They are given the authority to take people's civil rights, to take them into custody, or sometimes to shoot. And so their engagement with the community is a component of how a sort of a us against them mentality. It's very important that you understand that officers sometimes use that code of silence to protect themselves from the community that they claim they're serving. And it's that us against them attitude and mentality that gets played out when we see that bleed over into the community and how they police the community.
Let me ask you this, Counselor, if it's inappropriate, just let me know. But any of you ladies ever felt like you go into the station and you just had it up to here, and the next dude who comes and, inappropriate at you, you're going to get your service revolver and just let him have it?
No, no, no,
Not that far.
no. You know
Not
I
what?
can answer that.
Not that
Um,
far.
not that far, but I can tell you that there's been several times where I've just had it to the point where
Absolutely.
you just have to be expressive. You have to be expressive. But if you're a Black woman and you express yourself,
Mhm.
you are now angry.
an angry Black woman.
You're complaining. You're causing problems. If I was a woman of another color, then she's just opinionated. She's expressing her feelings.
That's true.
But because I'm Black and I'm speaking up, I'm being vocal, I'm always going to be angry. Always going to be angry. So say, Carl, for example, if you and I are saying some things to each other, and you're a man, I'm a woman, and I'm telling you how I feel. I'm expressing myself to you. I'm telling you how I feel because this is how you made me feel. And it's like she's being a bitch. No, I'm not. I'm trying to let you know this is what you said. This is how it made me feel. I don't like it. Please don't do it again. So now you take that information and you take it back to the other guys in the locker room, and they
Mhm.
spread that around. And now I am a bitch because you said so. So because you said so, it has to be true.
Yeah.
So all the other guys are going to assume that's real. That's real.
Mhm.
And so now that's going around the department. And every time someone sees me, oh, that's Carr. That's that bitch that Carl was telling us about.
Right.
Why can't
Locker
I just
room talk.
right? It's locker room talk.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
if you're in a profession that is historically male, particularly white male, and you're Black and you're a woman and you speak up for yourself, no matter how it comes out, you're going to be deemed as angry. No matter how it comes out, you can be as polite and professional as you want to. You're going to be seen as angry. People are going to distance themselves from you. They're going to stop talking to you. They may stop backing you up on scenes. They don't
Yes.
want to ride with you. They don't want to be on details with you,
Mhm.
asking me how I know, because I lived through that for years
Right.
and I'm still going through it.
Yeah.
I'm still living through it.
Yep.
Well,
Can I add in something about
yeah, go ahead.
retaliation? After I filed my complaint, after I reached out to Pam, I got legal representation. I went to the executive assistant chief and basically begged for a transfer. They did allow me to be transferred. I was on the captain's list, and I was next to be promoted on the captain's list. Now the chief has the right. I always make sure you know the chief is well within his right to stop the list at any point in time that he wants to stop the list. However, what he can't have is an acting person in that rank. So currently, the police department is paying someone to be an acting captain that never took the promotional exam, never went through the process, and it is a very, very, very difficult process. It's not easy at all. Um, Never went through any of the process, never made the list at all, and they're being paid as a captain, and they let my name die on the list and said I had, and basically I had to retest. They were made aware of it. Pam Pam made them aware of it. She wrote a letter, and they pretty much just stopped answering her, and we had to go to the next step. But that was blatant retaliation, and it is clearly written in the rules that they cannot do that. It is in the DC personnel regulation. I'm not in the union because I'm management, but they do speak about that in the union contract. But it's in the DC personnel regulation that talks about promotions, having an eligible register, and how you're supposed to promote from that eligible register. And you can have someone acting for a period of time, they can extend it one time, and they can only place somebody in a position, a permanent position, if they don't have an eligible register. They didn't follow any of the rules, and they just don't care. And they've consistently done that.
Right. So Carl, just to put a finer point on it, in our class action, we don't just allege the complaints of these three women, right? We allege these patterns, these policies, and these practices that have been going on for 10 plus years, right? That affect all the Black women who've worked at MPD. Our class is potentially 700 Black women police officers, right? And we're saying that this practice, like LaShawn just said, of putting people in acting promoted roles, like acting sergeant, acting lieutenant, acting captain, for the express purpose of blocking the promotion of someone who took the test and scored well, like LaShawn or Tamika, is one of the tools that MPD uses to systematically keep back Black women from being promoted. Black women are the least promoted group in MPD, right? Least, hardest, most disciplined, and least promoted. And they use tools and tricks like this. Now, again, is it the end of the world? No, it's not the end of the world. But is it right? No, it's not right. And over time, when it's just yet another thing that they're doing to make you feel small,
Exactly.
make you feel disrespected, make you isolated, take away what you've earned, make you feel unworthy, it becomes a constant mantra on your head, right? That I'm the one that's getting treated wrong every day, and it's
Mhm.
designed to break your spirit. So
Yep.
guess what? Quite often it does.
And it's important that people know, especially DC residents, that it costs the taxpayers of the District of Columbia an exorbitant amount of money to put on a promotional test. They have to rent space at the convention center. They pay outside companies to write these tests. They fly in outside assessors to go over. There's a first phase, and then there's a second and third phase. They have to compile. From what I understand, it costs about $1 million each time they do this. The person that they're paying as an acting captain will retire at that salary that's coming out of the taxpayers' money that they did not earn. They didn't earn it.
Which begs the
And
question now, of course, because the money. Do you think the police and tell me about the union how they fall on this, and should the money come out of the union, or because it's coming out of taxpayers' money in Washington D.C.
Right.
If they win or lose, they don't care. The accused, they don't care because it's not coming out of their pocket.
Well, it depends on the claim. Some of them might. Their whistleblower retaliation claims can come against individuals, but But Carl, there's a good, what's interesting is that, just today, the mayor announced that she wants to increase the number of police officers and increase the budget. And it's like, what's so funny to me is that they don't own how much money they waste by pushing out good officers because they're, complain of discrimination or they complain of sexual harassment. It costs a whole
Mhm.
lot more money to create a new officer than to keep a current officer, right? But that's a fraud, waste, and abuse kind of situation. I,
And also to fight this lawsuit as well.
Absolutely. And,
Mhm.
and MPD gets sued up, down, and sideways all the time. There's never a time when they're not being sued. And they're constantly being sued because they have constant bullying, harassment, retaliation, sexual discrimination, and so on.
Yes.
And their answer is, well, we'll just hire an equity officer. An equity officer is not going to make those bullying men, those sexually harassing men stop doing what they're doing. The thing is, they're going to hire somebody new, but they're never going to hold accountable the people who are doing wrong.
Thank you.
And Tamika got a question from Natalie. Natalie wants to know, was your partner black or white?
My partner was white male.
Okay. And what are the white females, and what are the white women on the force? What are they saying? Are they experiencing the same? Are they subject to the same abuse that you ladies have been?
So you have different women on the force. A lot are experiencing the same, and some are experiencing worse. You do have the group that have experienced it, but they play along to get along, and they are now being like taken care of. You have that group that stand up like myself, and like Karen said, they will label us as the angry black woman, or she's just being problematic. They'll give you all these labels that don't belong to you. And then you also have the group that is willing to play the game as they cultivate on the department, because they are afraid and they don't have the courage that we do. So in this fight, we're fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for those who can't fight for themselves. And we're fighting for justice. We're fighting
And
for.
I can say about the white women, for the most part, especially once they get promoted and they go into management, the officer level, some people go into different specialized assignments, but for the most part, people answer calls for service. But once they begin to get promoted, and especially beyond the rank of captain, they start disappearing. They don't leave them in the district. They go to specialized units, administrative units. They end up being detailed somewhere, and then they stay. You don't see them. I'm sure if you're able to get through the make a FOIA request to the police department by demographics, white male, black male, white female, black female, especially in management, you'd be surprised at where they are. I can tell you. And if they do have them in the district, they're in pretty nice districts. And that was the problem. I was in a district, it was just too many black people there. Now that I'm gone, I've gone back to another district where it's a lot busier. We have a lot of crime. There are a lot of good people that work there, but the demographics of where I work now in management, we have there's only a couple of white lieutenants and a couple of white captains, mind you, because we have so much work. We have one more captain than this other district does. If you go back to another side of the city where I came from, they only have one or two blacks, and the rest is white.
Right.
So I was just too much up there. They had checked that box. They had a black female there, and they didn't need me there for the most part.
Right. I think if you were to look across MPD, you would find a lot of what I call cliquish. It's almost like
Yes.
departmental apartheid. Like you have departments that are almost all black and departments that are almost all white. And when somebody comes into a department with a lot of black people and they don't think that they want black people, they will move them all out. A perfect example is in internal affairs. Before Wilfredo Manlapaz ran internal affairs, there were 13 black people in that department. He decided that was way too many. vocally stated that he wanted to make changes. And the next thing you know, virtually all the Black people were pushed out, especially the Black women. They went down from like 9 to 2, and one of them were brand new, right? So, but then you look at the court liaison division, and it's all Black women. It's all Black women, right? There's no sense of equitable dispersing of roles. SOD with special operations was supposed to be, it's a white man's world up in there, right? They have a whole bunch of white men and very few women and very few Black women, right? So it's this cliquishness. I like to, when people ask me, well, Pam, what is your opinion of MPD? I was like, it's Mean Girls, but with guns, right? It is that kind of cliquish, high school, factionalist favoritism, my team, my crew, my clique. And people use their authority to surround themselves with people they think are loyal to them and to push out people they think are disloyal to them.
True.
But how'd you get around that? When internal affairs is stacked against you, you court of last resort on the job, what's left?
Pam. Attorney Pam. That what's left is finding a lawyer that's fearless and willing to take on City Hall and willing to take on the police department and the culture behind it. When Tabitha and Zenobia came to me, it occurred to me that it wouldn't work if it was just one or two, because they would just get crushed in the litigation. That's why we pursued it as a class action, because when 10 stand together, they're so much stronger. But it takes a lot more work to do a class action. It's a lot of work on the part of the attorney. So you need an attorney that is committed to the cause, not just committed to the result. Like, it's not just about the money for me. This is very much about system disrupting litigation. That's a lesson I learned from my law partner, Donald Temple, who is one of the best, litigators in the city for civil rights. You have to have lawyers out there that make it possible for middle class wage earners to get top legal support, which is based on how you build them and how you structure your practice, and has the willingness to put in the work to fight this kind of fight.
So where does it stand now, Counselor? What's the legal status now?
So it's in briefing. I mean, of course, the city moved to dismiss on a whole bunch of different reasons, and you can expect them to do that. But it just moves at pace. All of this stuff moves slowly through the courts. I mean, we're grateful that we think we have a fair and reasonable judge in federal court. He has 2 pending cases. In the third case that I filed, 3 pending cases and a 4th case that may be removed to federal court as well. I just keep suing them. I have another one in the pipeline. It's gonna get filed sometime this week. I'm not going to stop suing MPD. Why? Because they haven't stopped doing wrong. That's why. So I just don't take a defensive posture. I take an offensive posture. And I understand that there's risk involved with litigation. I know that. We may not win, but I'd rather go down swinging.
No. And Natalie says, go get them, Pam. So that's one of our listeners. Couldn't get to all the questions. We got a lot of folks that had questions for you. So ladies, but I really, really want to thank you. A great, great job. And please be careful out there. Is there anything that we could do? Because the calls, the questions of people are showing support for you, ladies. So
yes.
I got to let you know, if you're out there in the street and people have seen us, they've got your back. They really got your back. They're really supportive of you. So I just want you to know that. I couldn't get to all of them, but I just want you to know there's a consensus of the people who are watching tonight.
Sure. And if anybody has a comment, a question, or whatever, they can reach out to these ladies. I'll make sure that they get them. You can email me at PamKeith, PamKeith, at centerforemploymentjustice.com. That's PamKeith at centerforemploymentjustice.com. I'll just make sure that your comment, question, or whatever gets to these young women who need to hear from you.
Yes. Right. And follow us on Instagram. Sharon,
thank you, ladies. Please stay safe. And we're
Courageous
tomorrow night at 8 o'clock as well.
I'm sorry, what was the Instagram again?
We're at Courageous Women on Instagram, and we also have a Twitter, Courageous Women.
Courageous Women. Follow us on social media.
Courageous Women. And let me just remind folks that we did contact the Metropolitan Police Department and asked them to comment. We asked them for a response. We haven't heard back from them because but we did reach out to them. Ladies, again, thank you.
Thank
Please
you.
stay safe and please
Thank
stay
you.
healthy. Good night.
Good
Thank
night.
you. Good night.